Right, back live with you tonight here on In Focus. The South African Constitution was adopted by the Constitutional Assembly on the 8th of May in 1996, taking another step away from apartheid to democracy. It guaranteed equal rights for people of all races and was hailed as one of the most progressive globally. But some political parties have called for the document to be amended to accommodate, for instance, bringing back the death penalty and accommodating independent states within the Republic. Batho Congress President Philani Mavundla is with me in the studio on that, as well as the African People's Convention leader Themba Godi joining me on the conversation. You can weigh in also tonight, 072-110-5584. Drop us an X at Newzroom 405. Gentlemen, good evening. Good to have you, and thank you very much for coming in. Melas, good to have you. It is understood that every liberation struggle, every rebellion, if not followed by a constitution, would be, pointless, right? Because we then put the constitution together and we agree that there should be limited exercise of state power and individual dignity should be preserved and protected. So to what extent is that traditional perspective not adequate to meet South Africa's needs?
Mdloli, let's start by saying our forefathers, our leaders, the Mandelas and so on, those who put together the constitution, at some point they felt that it was the best constitution for the people of South Africa. And I think we will all have agreed at that particular point. 25, 30 years down the line, we look at it, we are saying, have we achieved what we wanted to achieve? For instance, do we own the land now? Do we own the means of what is coming out of the minerals of South Africa? The answer will be no. Has the natives' way of life improved? The answer will be no. You'll not remember that at some point as a deputy mayor of eThekwini. In eThekwini, you've got more informal housing than formal houses. That tells you something. And the next question will be, in 1994, we had 2.8 million people who were under the social net that the government was paying them grant. Today, we are sitting on 28 million. Will we then look at ourselves and say, hey, we've done very well? This is exactly what we've been looking for. The truth of the matter, I think we'll all agree that, no, we have not done well. Therefore, we need to look at our cause and say, are we really on the correct path, or do we need to change? That is what we need to ask ourselves. And ourselves, as APC, we've asked ourselves this question many times, and it's been very clear to us that the best way to move forward is to get out of South Africa, and that's where we are.
Themba Godi, why is there this tension, the values, or two values of the tension being prevent unlimited use of state power versus the policies that are encouraging economic development?
Well, look, the Constitution is a necessary document in terms of defining the structures, the systems within which state power should be exercised. And the adoption of the Constitution in 1996 was a very important moment, important in the sense that it finally confirmed that the dream of freedom, the goals of the liberation struggle as defined by the Africanists were firmly betrayed. But today, as I'm talking to you, we're also looking back and say, well, even this compromise document, to what extent has it been made a living document in terms of its ability to impact on the lives of our people? So the question of limitation of power vis-a-vis economic development, I'm not sure if the dichotomy is really dialectical in the sense that limitation of power has to do with issues of accountability for officials, whereas issues of economic development will have to do much more with the relations of production, the means of production. How are they managed? How are they owned? Who owns what? Who doesn't own what? And in our case, the tension will be that the expectation of the wretched of the earth 30 years down the line to live a life of dignity is actually hampered by this very constitution, which has sought to put constraints on what the new government can do and or cannot do. If you look at the question of the land, for example, purely as a means of production, access to it, how many of our people have accessed land since 1994? I'm not talking about it in the broader sense of national sovereignty, a symbol of statehood, resolving the national question, but purely at the level of land as a means of production. To what extent is it accessible to our people? And all of these are limited by the constitution. And I must say that the Africanists are vindicated, because when this constitution was drafted, the Africanists argued that under Section 25 on property, land should be excluded. Land should not be seen as a property, but it must be seen as the national inheritance for all South Africans, so that it must not be a commodity that can be exchanged between individuals. In a country with the highest level of inequality, it means it's only the rich who will always have access to the best lands and the biggest parts of the land that they so wish to have.
So, Molas, I mean, why then do we choose, I mean, firstly, as a country, as you say, in the forefathers, the ages of Mandela, we agree that it's the sovereign will of the people that we have this unitary state, right? Why are we now at this point saying, well, that idea of foregoing the ethnic demands of particular groupings in the interest of national unity should be foregone?
Really, remember that during Codesa, you had people like myself and Godi, the politician, who believed that they were talking for everyone. You'll remember that the only politician who forced his way through is the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who made sure that King became the part and parcel of that discussion. Now, the truth of the matter is, when this South Africa was formed in 1910, our kings, our monarchies had nothing to do with it, and those are the custodians of our land. And then in 1994, when we, the natives, now started being part and sitting around the table, we left our monarchies out of it. So it was a house being built for the politicians. And all we are saying is, in order not to argue about who does the land belongs to and all the beautiful things that we may have to say, it's very simple. If we turn around and say, the land, of course, it belongs to the monarchies, who are the custodian, who are the people who are supposed to be saying, so and so should use this, following this and that. In that way, we should be okay. So all we are saying is that in 1994, when this whole thing was discussed, it left the owners of the land. In actual fact, the mayors and the councillors now, they've like become the landlord now. They're the one who decide what needs to happen. And we can't really remain saying that is acceptable, that is correct. That's why, as APC now, we've decided, you know what, we're not going to argue about the whole lot and everything. We are going to talk about the land that belongs to the Zulus. When we say Zulus, we're not necessarily saying Zulu because I'm a Mavundla. No, we're talking about the people who are in KwaZulu, who respect what is happening in KwaZulu. That is what we're talking about. But we want out of South Africa because it is definitely not working for the natives. That is what it is.
Mr. Godi, you were in Parliament, you were part of the lawmakers. I mean, was that our failure? Did we fail in this approach that we took to forego the ethnic interests of the monarchs and their land and whatnot in lieu of national unity? Because every time this debate comes about to say, no, we chose that we are going to be a unitary state, one nation, national unity is what we are going to go for. So much so that a conversation that we are having now around ethnicity is quite an uncomfortable conversation in South Africa to have.
Yeah, look, Bratabo, for me as a Pan-Africanist, the rallying call has always been for the unity of the African people. And even the limited achievements we had in 1994 were as a result of the united efforts, primarily of all Africans. And to say now once we have achieved some measure of political, freedom, we must then go our separate ways. I think it is playing into the dangerous terrain of the homeland system, whose objective was to keep us apart. Just recall in 1963, when the OAU was formed, Kwame Nkrumah remarked that one of the greatest achievements of that meeting was the fact that people called themselves Africans and not Ghanaians, Ethiopians, and all that. And I think that in the case of South Africa as well, we who are Africanists or Pan-Africanists are pushing for more unity. The issue around the land and the position of traditional leaders or the monarchs, I think there is an issue that is not being properly addressed. They say the land belongs to the kings and the chiefs, they are the custodians. You see, these for me are two different terms. If they are custodians on whose behalf? On behalf of the people. Or does it belong to them as individuals? Just yesterday, I was campaigning in one village here in Bushbuck Ridge. The people don't have services, and when they go to the chief, they are ordered to pay 3,500 as a prerequisite for them to get services. Now, you see what that kind of thing does is that it makes people feel that, well, we have this system, but does it work for us? Or is it something that benefits some people? We know there were traditional leaders or chiefs who fought for freedom, but we also had a lot of them who were sellouts, who collaborated with the apartheid system. So yes, the system of traditional leadership is there, it's part of our being as Africans, but the individuals who occupy those positions still need to prove themselves that they are worthy of the respect that they demand and expect from the people. I think when we fought for freedom, we're not only fighting to overthrow white domination, but also to correct shortcomings within our own systems, one of which is to elevate an individual above the people. The people are the final arbiters. So whatever system we have can never be defined in terms of an individual and not the people.
Yeah. What do you make of this idea that ABC is advancing, that self-determination or being able to achieve a process of self-definition of particular ethnic groupings, this time around the Zulus, will advance the developmental project, especially in that province?
Nah, look, I don't think it's serious. I suspect it's part of some project to create halubalo over nothing. He knows that will never be achieved, or it might just be a means of getting some votes from people in that part of KwaZulu. Otherwise, it's a backward idea, really, very, very backward, that does not assist the cause of the African people. We have 2063, by which Africa hoped to be a united continent with one central government. So why move backwards when everyone is moving forward? I don't take that view seriously, honestly.
Why move backwards when everybody is moving forward?
Look, we can't stop APC to believe that they've moved forward if they believe that they've done so. That's acceptable. But we are saying we have not moved forward. That is the reality. That's why I said to you, even if you look at where we were in 1994 and where we are today, it's very clear. But Mdluli, let's bring another angle that the people need to understand. As it stands right now, you have an NGO called a Social Research Foundation. They've done 2 research in terms of KwaZulu-Natal as well as Western Cape. And the majority of the people who have participated, they've said, we want out. Now, let me bring this angle to Themba Godi. Right now, we are, as a country now, we are owing IMF, I think we're sitting on 4.7 trillion rand. This man will never, ever service this debt. SARS have taken everything from the South African, and there's nothing more that is still going to come. If you were to ask a question, was this money borrowed because the government was making our life to be better? My answer to you will be, I don't think so. Instead, there were 20 billion advanced to SAA, another 20 billion, another 20 billion, and then to ESCOM and so on. But until this day, we are still in the dark. If we're talking of 30 days of no load shedding, it's because we're burning the whole lot of diesel that is costing us money. So if there are some South Africans who are native and Pan-Africanists that believe that we've moved forward, good for them. But let me also say this. When the Organization of African Unit was formed, it was being formed by Africans. There wasn't anyone who was working for the Stellenbosch boys at that point. Now we do know that we have presidents that get bought in order to win conferences and run the country. That is not the will of the people. That's a reality. Don't run away from that. Now we are sitting at the time where things have really changed. If we believe that going backward will be the best for us, let it be. The configuration of this country in 1910, we had absolutely nothing to do with it. We need to get it reconfigured. And this is not a pipe dream. Yeah. It is going to happen.
So part of what they're saying is untenable, this idea, the feasibility of it won't work. I mean, you mentioned owning a couple of ports, owning a couple of airports in KwaZulu-Natal and so on and so forth. But all those were built on the auspices of national participation. It wasn't one province that would have built that particular infrastructure.
Really, let me just throw a span in the work. Not long ago, our Tata Thabo Mbeki is the one who sponsored the Southern Sudan. It seems as if South Africans are forgetting this. Now, when we're talking of the Zulu state, it seems as if it's a big issue. The reason we've mentioned all what we have in terms of our infrastructure development is simply to say to our people, quite frankly, we have everything that we need to run a country. The only thing that we don't have is a power station, and we aren't worried about it. In 24 months, you'll have it running. That is not an issue. So basically, let the Zulus come out of South Africa. Nobody's going to suffer. They'll carry on and live their life if they believe they are fine the way they are. Let me take you a step back. Before we had the government that we have today, you know, Mluli, we had the like of African Bank. African Bank folded in the hands of our African brothers in the very same parliament in front of them. In all what used to be TPVC state, they used to have, including the VBS Bank, fell in our hands. But what then has happened, when it came to the banks that are owned by the whites, they were protected. That is the reality. Now, can we always sit back and say, no, everything is okay? No, we are saying things aren't okay. As we speak today, every South African owes IMF about 80,000 rand per person. That's what it is. And I haven't taken any money from IMF, and I don't remember benefiting anything out of that. Everything that I do, I need to pay. To get here, I have to pay the toll gates. To land at the airport, I have to pay the airport tax and so on. So basically, where has this money gone to?
Mr. Godi, that's the general criticism that says the constitutional design that we have literally is influenced by liberal constitutionalism, rule of laws and things like that seem to discount the lived experience of Africans. And maybe in a sense even to the benefit of a particular minority group.
Yeah, no, very true. Look, a constitution of any country is a reflection of the balance of, you know, the power balance amongst the various political forces. The one we have from 1996 is a reflection of the power balance, and the power balance has remained in the hands of our former oppressors in collusion with the ANC. Look, we went to Harare in 1991 for a meeting between the ANC and the PAC, sponsored by the Zimbabwean government, to say, let us form a united front to negotiate with the apartheid government. And around October, we went to Durban, where about 91 organizations met and resolved that the ANC and the PAC should negotiate on behalf of the African majority. But what happened? The ANC ran away and negotiated secretly with the Boers, and the product is what we have on the table. So yes, there were lots of compromises that resulted in the kind of constitution that we have, which is too Eurocentric. That does not reflect African values. It's almost like we're in Europe. were not in Africa, or as Africans, we had no value system, we had no systems, and we had to depend for everything on what the Europeans had brought. So, yes, I have a criticism on the constitution, but unlike Mavundla, I don't want it to reflect Ubuntu. I want it to reflect Africanism or Africanness collectively as a people. Draw from our history, draw from our culture, draw from our own African systems and say, how do we update them to be relevant to a modern industrial state?
Yeah. One thing positive about the Constitution is that it can be amended. So the challenge is, how do you come up with your version of an ethnic-based constitutional design?
Well, Loli, let's take a step back. There was an opportunity of amending Section 25 of the Constitution. We all know that. In the last hour, the EFF decided they're not going to support that. Now, let's face it.
Yeah. They'll give you another story. They'll say the ANC decided not to support
tomorrow you can put something
clause
that three of us here will agree to say it's the best.
Yeah.
And Mavundla decide, you know what? No, it's not going to happen. That is the reality. Because who does Mavundla represent in that parliament? We're saying we're representing everybody. There is no such. Mavundla will be representing his constituents. And in this case, we are very clear. We are saying we are representing the interests of one particular group. We are not being apologetic about this. We've been too apologetic for a very long time. I've got a lot of friends and business partners who are Indians. Yeah. They're asking me a question. Mavundla, you're saying we're out. And there's a question that they cannot answer me. I asked them a question. You had Minority Front in KZN for Rajbansi for many years. Whose interest was it representing? The Indians. That's it. You've got Freedom Front Plus. Whose interest is it representing? The Afrikaner. That's the end of the story. So basically, we are saying it's been done. It has worked very, very well. The Indians always had Rajbansi with a Minority Front representing them. And we are saying we are representing the interests of AmaZulu, and that's where we are starting. We come right with this one. We'll move to the Free State and go and speak the same language, because this business of trying to be diplomatic about the situation that we are in, right now, go to Middle East Mdluli and buy a can of Coke. It will be written in Arabic. Go to KwaZulu, buy a bag of potato. It's written potatoes are tapels. Who are the biggest consumers of artapels? AmaZulu, but it's not written in Amazamba. Should we say we're okay, let's wait another 30 years, maybe artapels will then be turned and be called Amazamba? It can't be correct. Even the medicine that we buy KwaZulu is written in Afrikaans and English. So the 50-50 policy has still remained. And nobody has stood up in the parliament and said, hang on, how can you still have a policy of 50-50 when the majority of the people are nowhere? So basically,
one can argue, I mean, packaging on stuff, you can write whatever language you want. We've got 11 official languages.
Precisely, because
there is no language that you can't put on the packaging of your product.
Because we don't own the means of this production, and the people who are selling to us, because we are a market, they don't take us serious. So they'll write what suits them. We are not counted, Mdluli. Don't bluff yourself. We are not counted. We are just outside in the whole chain. That's what it is.
Hence, they'll say, well, this project that you are, as Themba Godi says, you're advancing, will really see you only being successful in KwaZulu-Natal. It's not something that will be nationwide.
Mdluli, if that only happened in KZN, that's fine, and then the Zulus will be free. But then AmaXhosa as well will see that AmaZulu are free now. They'll want it. AbeSuthu, they will see. We're already talking the same language in Free State. So basically, at the end of the day, it will get to where the people, they will see that this utopia that was sold to us, it is really not working for us. Yes, it is working for the minority. They want us balkanized as we are. It is working for them, but it is not working for us. You can't now show me the Baba Richard Maponyas anymore. You can't show me any of those. Instead, we have people now who are foreigners who are even here illegally, running the very same shop that used to belong to the African traders. That is the reality. And we need to come to a point where we'll say, it is this or nothing else. They had it for too long now. The time has come. We need to say something about it.
President of ABC, Philani Mavundla, and the African People's Convention leader, Themba Godi. I appreciate your time. Thank you both for coming on. We've got your headlines at top of the hour. Stay with us.